Bill C-7 proposes to allow people whose death is not reasonably foreseeable to have access to medical aid in dying under specific conditions that act as safeguards. These safeguards should, in principle, protect vulnerable people and affirm that Canada is committed to recognizing that the life of all Canadians matter and should not be ended lightly. Taking life and bodily integrity seriously are some of the key values underlying the criminal code's offenses against the person, including murder or aiding suicide. Medical aid in dying is contrasted from these offenses and carved out as an exceptional normative sphere within which the state can permit actively ending human lives on grounds of respect and compassion. This carefully delineated encroachment on the state's constitutional commitment to the value of life would now be widened to include people who have the option of living but choose to die. Legally speaking, there are at least two ways of formulating the concerns about Bill C-7 that one can reasonably have and that some people within the disability community share. One is on the basis of equality rights, and the other one is on the basis of the rights to life, liberty, and security, respectively, Section 15 and 7 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. As for inequality and unjustified discrimination, by removing the proximity of death requirement, the law would not only target severe disabilities connected to impending death, not only dying people with disabilities, the bill would legalize the euthanasia and assisted suicide of a larger population of people with serious and permanent disabilities. People with severe disabilities have historically been the object of various kinds of injustice. Distributive injustice, when they do not receive social goods or supports that would make their lives tolerable, let alone thriving. Epistemic injustice, when scholars and practitioners alike assume that their quality of life and well-being is lower than it actually is. Their very humanity and legal personhood has been challenged and their lives threatened or ended. It would not be responsible to read Bill C-7 outside of this long history of stigma. Bill C-7 makes the MAID framework no longer about the dying and how they should die. It is about the living and whether their lives are reasonably not worth living. It opens MAID not just to dying people with disabilities, but to Canadian citizens who happen to be seriously disabled, just like they could happen to be Black, Indigenous, or Muslim. That is the analogy drawn by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights and the independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights by older persons. They expressed, I quote, alarm at the growing trend to enact legislation enabling access to medically assisted dying based largely on having a disability or disabling conditions, including in old age. Under no circumstance should the law provide that it could be a well-reasoned decision for a person with a disabling condition who is not dying to terminate their life with the support of the state, end quote. Yet, that is the differential treatment that Bill C-7 would create, threatening the right of equal protection under the law. Now, if we want to avoid making highly controversial value judgments about life and let people decide for themselves what is a life worth living, then why not allow every Canadian citizen to receive assistance in ending their lives? The answer to this is, of course, that we take life seriously. Why not then take the lives of people with disabilities equally seriously? If the answer is that serious disabilities sometimes correlate to intolerable lives, this is a probabilistic generalization which has been refuted in scholarship on well-being and disability. Surely the state must fine-tune its statutory framework to avoid unnecessary stigmatizing generalizations. At the very least, it is our duty as a society committed to respecting life, liberty, and equality to ensure that sufficient resources and supports are provided to people who are contemplating MAID, so that Canadian citizens do not die deaths of despair, do not die because of neglect and social injustice, do not die because of insufficient caring and support system arrangements, leaving them poor, lonely, resourceless, and without access to sources of meaning, making their lives tolerable. Currently, Bill C-7 only gestures at these positive obligations on the part of the state concerning social determinants of autonomy, life, and security in paragraphs G and H that require the doctor or nurse to inform the patient of counseling, disability support, and community services that may alleviate their suffering, but that does not guarantee their availability. And it may end up being an empty formality rather than a robust nudge towards a tolerably meaningful life, the kind of nudge all non-disabled Canadians receive when they contemplate suicide. I anticipate obvious objections regarding provincial competence over healthcare and social support, as well as about social rights. I have some answers to these important objections, and I will gladly share them with the committee now or in writing. Feel free to contact me individually should you wish any additional information if I'm not able to answer on the spot or don't have the time to do so today. Thank you.